So now for the second part of our webinar. The topic is innovative tourism products, and we have chosen two good practices from our region, Hamburg Metropolitan Region. One is the Herzapfelhof, very difficult to pronounce for everybody out there. I know, the hard apple farm, so maybe it can be translated like this, which is in Monica's region that we saw earlier, the Altes Land, the fruit area, and which will be presented by Rolf Lühs, who is the farmer actually. As you can see him there. And after that, we will have the Port Museum of Hamburg, which we would have visited on our first day of the interregional learning session in Hamburg, but which we will visit it digitally today. So, Mr. Lühs, you will tell us more about your success. I don't know, your successful little touristic offer combined with an actual working farm. The floor is yours.
Yes. Good morning, moin. Yes, my name is Rolf Lühs. I'm the junior orchard manager on the farm, and I'm supposed to show you a little bit what we're doing. As you can see here in the first slide, we have special orchard there with the shape of a Herzapfel. This is something that we have in general. We are quite a touristy farm in our area. We have about 500 fruit growing farms, and not all of them are specialized in tourism stuff. Most of them are producing indirectly for the supermarkets, and some are going to the farmers markets. And in the end of 80s, my father chose a different path for the farm. So he went into producing apples with a heart on them. Unfortunately, in this presentation that I have right now, I don't have any apple with a heart on it. It began with putting a sticker on an apple when it's almost fully grown. End of August, beginning of September, then the apple is almost has almost its full size. And then we put a sticker on the green apple. Then the apple is coloring because the sunlight hits the apple skin, and it's not coloring underneath the sticker. So then we have a heart on the apple, which was just a fun thing for our shop. And then that became a little bit more throughout the decades, basically. That we did that for companies as well. And with this special thing, we got more and more requests. Show us what you're doing. This is a neat thing. And then we, without wanting, went into the tourism business. And basically, every 5 to 10 years, we need to do something new and crazy to make the story a little bit more, Germany say, round. So make the whole thing a little bit more stable. So it started all out with 4 hectares of fruit growing, and then we started with this sticker thing. Please go to the next slide.
Well, the next slide will be the film. Do you want me to show the film and start the film? And people won't hear the sound, but you can talk.
Actually, we can. I think we can leave it like that. I don't know if we need to see the film, but that on that slide you can actually see this is a smiley, but this is what the hard apple looks, just with a heart. So that's basically the origin of our special thing.
We could start the film and you can talk while the film is running, because nobody will hear the sound. It's without sound.
Good. So then we can start it, I guess. It's quite a long one though, with 58 minutes. But there are some impressions about fruit growing. So this is for juice. This is not how we handle our good apples. Yes, this is me thinning. Yeah, this is quite an old one actually, I think. So this is how it looks like in blossom. So we are in general touristy area, and just the little impressions. I don't think we need to look at it for that much longer, I think. So we can stop this. Go to the next slide. What today our business is that we do around 500 guided tours around our farm, me and my father together. So these are busloads of people that come here. That is like a little association, some old friendship from school that still meet 50 years afterwards, once a year. Those are just single tourists that come here to the area. So these are tours that we do. We have, they can basically book a tour, lasts about an hour. And this is something that we do now for, I don't know, 20 years, I think. Or even more than 20 years, is something that we do here. We also offer a picnic in the orchard. This is something that people have to pre-order. Then they can go get the food, a little wagon, and sit underneath the apple tree. This is something that we're doing right now. They can also adopt an apple tree. So lots of people inside the city, they don't have a green backyard to have an apple tree, but everybody's supposed to have an apple tree. So when they don't, when they can't do it themselves, then they need to rent basically one. So this is something which is quite a good thing to get people on the farm, especially when it's a Christmas present. Then they meeting for Blossom, maybe with the grandparents, and see in summer for how the tree's doing, and then in fall they are coming again with the family to pick the tree. So this is something that we do. So we're in close cooperation with local tourism authorities here that support us a little bit, and yes, so this is something about this, and everything is about the hard apple. So Herzapfelhof is hard apple farm. So this, in the beginning, there was Obsthof Lühs, so fruit farm Lühs with the last name Lühs, and then it made the transition into Herzapfelhof, so hard apple farm, because this is our brand then. Okay, we can go on the next slide. Yes, as you saw on the first slide, we have this labyrinth where we have 250 different apple varieties that we planted. So people can come here to see the old historic apple varieties that maybe they know from their childhood days, and have some memories to them. We sell these apples as well on the online shop. So these lost taste, flavors, they are still able to get here. We also combine that with a little restaurant, a cafe, not so much restaurant, more cafe. So apple pie, and some coffee. We adopted in our new building a conference room, so that we rent out yes, a conference room above the apple tree, so with a nice outlook there. So this is something that we do. In 2012, we went to become an organic farm, and in 2015 we managed to do that. So it takes 3 years. So now we are quite an attractive place for the local Hamburg people on the weekend to have a trip in the green. We then are organic, so for all the city population that likes organic stuff and the green and fruit has a healthy image, we are quite of a cool destination, and with so much visitors and lots of questions being asked to us. So why you do this? Why don't you have this variety? Why? We constantly are challenged in adopting what we should put in our portfolio. Maybe next slide. So here are some more impressions. So in the middle, you can see my dad with holding one of these boxes with these labeled fruits. Then on the lower left side, you can see little wagons. These wagons are behind a tractor. On the lower right side, you can see another picture of that. This is something that we do with the tourists as well. So we have them on a little train, fruit train, basically. So we use these wagons usually for picking the apples. but we tend to have the tourists drive around in these boxes as well, which is a fun thing, especially for kids. Then they get some action. Yeah, so that's something. Yes, next slide. Yeah, so what is the unique thing? We are trying to establish our farm as a brand, and pushing that, which is not so common in our area. So, but we're trying to push that hard. We also go quite a lot in online marketing. So we're using these AdWords to steer that the tourists are coming to us. We have 500 other fruit farms around the area. So we have about 15 to 20 farms that do that have a farm store. So we have lots of competition here, and so we need to get the people to drive to our farm and not stop the farm before. So we need to have some attractions there, some unique selling points to get the people actually to our farm. And our motto basically is, you haven't been to our area, to the Aldesland area, when you haven't seen our farm. So everybody that comes to our region has to come to our farm. When they are not, they didn't really were here in our area. So this is our little goal, basically, to achieve that. So yes, there you can see again the Herzapfelhof garden with these old apple varieties, and seeing that on Google Maps is also a neat feature. So I always tell the people that they can show their family where they've been today. They're just supposed to go on Google Maps, and then they can show where they've been that day. So next slide. So yes, how it's linked to river tourism. So we are only 1 meter above sea level. So we are on the flooding area here. So we are basically standing on the old river ground, and the soil here is very fertile. So we're only 2 kilometers away from the Elbe River. So we are really close to that, and that is something that is in our DNA, being close to the river. And was actually back in the day very important to transfer all the fruit on the waterways. And we have lots of canals here because they needed to drain this area. So lots of canals all over the place for irrigation purposes and drain purposes as well. Yep, so something about that. The next slide. So yes, our farm, our concept is quite unique to our region. There are other well-known fruit growing areas in Germany, but you could have this thing in other areas of Germany going on, but to push it quite that hard is something that not everybody is willing to commit to this tourism thing. And with these logo apples, these labeled apples, this is something that other companies are doing as well. We started this whole business 15 years ago, and we are trying. This is still a good storytelling thing, but we're trying to get out of, well, not get out of it, but we need to have something new in place with this organic thing, with this conference rooms. So when we have so much competition there that we don't rely on this one source of income, so that we have other things going on, which is working out quite well right now, even with Corona. So we had lots of people to come to pick their own apples this year. So we didn't have enough parking space. So we had like 80 cars have to stand on the streets. We didn't have enough parking for that, so that was quite bad, which was actually good, but quite bad for the customers. Okay, next slide. Yes, so the whole thing, our whole approach is that we are not necessarily are focused on one customer group as it's standard. When you basically have an online shop or your business model, you focus on this customer group. We are multi-channel, so for us it's important to have somebody on the farm, and then maybe the person thinks later about having use these apples with the label later if they need it, then, or they come for pick their own apples, and then they have their friends and they want to have a nice day together, and then they book a tour maybe a year later. So we try to have for every customer something in a year later that they need, that they already have an idea when that problem is coming, that they have to organize something or so that they get the ideas where they can buy some stuff from us and have the experience. Yes, and then yeah, we're not a museum. We're a productive farm, so we produce 1 million kilograms of apple a year. So we're not a museum, and we want to show the people that organic production isn't like doing nothing and all these things. We want to show our customers or our visitors that we have this approach, that we still want to feed the world, that there are things that are a little strange when you don't know anything about it, like spraying in organic fruit growing, and that we don't have these big trees like 10 meters high, that we have the small trees, and to show all these different things on a perspective where a family has to live off this land, and not just a museum where you have all the time but you don't work there, that you don't produce there. So this is our approach here. So yes, so that's all that about the story there. Yep, I'm finished.
Thank you very much, Lühs. Very interesting, I think. So if you have any questions, you are free to ask them now. Please indicate it in the chat. And I think there's one, Marion, you're going to read them? Can you?
Yes, of course. I couldn't read them in advance because I was presenting. So Misa wants to know from Misa, a very technical question. As an eco-farm, who is committed to sustainability? Do you work on RE use or wooden boxes?
Reuse, I think.
Reuse. Do you work on reuse of wooden boxes? The apples are transported in. What about plastic packaging inside the box? Do you know how it's disposed? So I think it's the whole complex of waste reduction.
Yeah, so we use wooden big bins which fit 300 kilograms for the apples. With the packaging, we don't do so much of the final packaging. When our apples go to the supermarket, we don't do that. We only pre-sort them and ship them away to the final pack house where they're finally packed. We do the final packing. So we don't do this plastic foil stuff. In the shop, we have cardboard boxes where we have the apples inside. There's no person committed to sustainability. We all do that by ourselves, and which is just our standard of doing these things. Then I see the second question of François,
maybe I read it.
Yeah, sure,
because
sure,
not everybody is reading the chat, I think. François would like to know whether you have built routes, itineraries, or partnerships with other local tourism stakeholders.
Well, we have partnership with a hotel here, with the local hotel, which have as a little welcome gift an apple. When people are coming in the room, they have an apple with a heart in the room. And then we have just with the local tourist office, they do the recommendations like standard working, but no tight partnerships as you would think there. And we're involved in all the area, but not in special partnerships or so. No, we don't. And we don't have routes. People can come here, can visit the whole farm, or well, run around in the orchard, and then but we don't have a built route. We have lots of ideas, but we don't have enough time to do all the stuff that we want to do. So, which is sad. Just takes time.
Yes, and Camille from Paris would like to know where your visitors mainly come from. Are they mainly regional, or do they come from Hamburg, or do you welcome also visitors from abroad or from Germany?
Well, mostly the regional, so say northern Germany, but we also have something that has quite been a lot this year with Corona, with camping people. So they have their, what's that in English, camper, the car they can live in, camper, and they're driving around, and we are in Landvergnügen, so in a guide where they can where they have lots of addresses, and they can stay for one night without payment. So these people, they can come here, and when we have space, they can stay here for a night. Mostly they don't need anything, maybe like a little bit electricity. So this is something that is like German people that are coming a lot. From other parts of Germany, so campers, but we're not a camping ground, a professional one. And then we have, especially for the cherry picking, that is something we offer. We have lots of people from Asia, because cherry has quite a high symbolic value in the Asian culture, especially in Japanese or Chinese culture. Yeah, lots of, say, non-German speaking people are coming for the pick your own thing, especially cherries. Yes, so that's something that we have.
You were also talking about competition. Wilde from Kaunas would like to know how you reacted on the similar examples that appeared after your farm was starting your branding and your marketing, and yes, you established all your office and marketing areas, marketing.
Yeah. So we just try to do the next thing. Okay, so we can't forbid somebody else to do what we do. So this is all common stuff. We just try to then get ahead in the next thing that is cool, or where we see where's demand. So with the sticker thing, lots of others did that. They stopped doing that because it's a lot of work. But then we specialized on that. We find our niche. Lots of other farms are saying all these old varieties, we don't want them, and then we say, okay, this is our niche. We find the niche. It's nice and warm inside the niche market niche. So we go in there. So we just try to get ahead and think about something else that we can make our money within 5 years. So this is our approach here.
Yes, to better understand the link with the River Elbe, Camille from Paris asked whether there are existing packages with boat tours or bike tours, or whether it would be a good idea to combine a visit on your farm with packages like boating and cycling tours.
Well, with the cycling tour, this is something that's going on already, but it's not in like packages or so. But we have lots of people that are doing during the day the cyclist tour, and then when they go home after the weekend trip, they stop at our farm shop, and because with the bike they can't haul 10 kilograms of apples that easily. They do that, so we have that already in place, but not as in fixed package or anything like that. And so with the rivers, yes, we have a riverboat company that that we started this year, that had people come here, but we're starting that. Yeah.
Yes, I think one could say for people coming from Hamburg to your farm, it's part of the adventure and the weekend highlight to start with crossing the River Elbe by boat and coming to the other side, to the south of Hamburg, and then starting to cycle or to walk to your farm. So for Hamburg people, I think definitely it belongs together.
Yeah.
So there's, well, let's see.
Maybe this is also the last question because otherwise we're going to run out of time.
There is one last question.
Yes.
from Wilte from Kaunas. Do you have any support from public sector in terms of communication and marketing?
No. No, we just do that ourselves. And my sister is
Monica is there. Monica Ole and her organization.
Yeah, well, okay, but this is I wouldn't consider that as a fund or any I understood this question as a funding thing or so. No, we don't get that. We are collaborating with the local, say, authorities, but we don't get funding or anything like that.
Okay, so I say thank you again for this interesting presentations and for all your questions. And so we move on to the last good practice for today, which is the Port Museum in Hamburg, which is a good practice not only as a touristic product that works a little bit differently because it relies heavily on locals, involvement of volunteers, but also, yes, for this topic that we had in Kaunas, for those people who have been there to Kaunas last September, where we had our session on locals and community involvement. So, and the Port Museum would have been on our list, as would have been the Herzapfelhof farm if we had met in Hamburg Metropolitan Region. So, Ursel Richenberger will present the Port Museum Hamburg. Ursel, the floor is yours. And please, Camille.
Yes.
Marion.
Yeah.
Will start
Marion.
the presentation.
You should see it by now, do you?
No, not yet.
Okay. Well, hang on.
Now.
Okay.
Now.
I'm sorry.
You have to click again, I think, to start the presentation.
No. Oh. That's the wrong one. That's the old one. That's the new one. So, also please start.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to present to you today the Port Museum Hamburg. And we are going to move right now from the countryside of Hamburg within the port in an industrial zone to a museum. Even though the Herzapfelhof was presented as being not a museum, I think the Port Museum is something not quite one is used to how a museum looks like, because the main attraction for this Port Museum is that there are a lot of volunteers working in this museum actually. So we are a working space, not only a place where exhibitions are shown. And to give you an impression of how this space looks like, I'd like to show you the next slide, please. Here you can have a look on the Port Museum of Hamburg. On the left-hand side, you see a former Kai shed. This Kai shed was used in actual port business until the 1960s and is now reopened as a museum. So we have an authentic working space that is used as a museum. And it's not only the Kai shed, but also the quay, the floating parade, the cranes, and the outdoor area that's around this Kai shed that is used to tell the story of working in a port. And we have a lot of volunteers working in this museum. As you can see on the right-hand side, there's Jan, one of our volunteers, explaining to visitors the architecture of this Kai shed, but also he is someone who used to work in a port. So it's not just a volunteer that whom we've trained to be a guide in our museum, but he is one who used to work in a port and has therefore a very own special way of telling the story, how it used to be to work in a port. Next slide, please. And where is this Port Museum of Hamburg? It's the white square, as you can see. It's on the south side of the River Elbe, within the port. As you can see, a lot of gray around the Port Museum. It's an industrial zone. It's an industrial area. It's within the present port of Hamburg, where the largest port of Germany, the third largest port in Europe. So it's loud, it's dirty, it's dusty, and it's not easily to get there. It's not a touristic hotspot, but we have the opportunity to show to the visitors how people used to work in the port, but also how the present port works. And that's the amazing opportunity for this area. Next slide, please. And this is how it looks like within the Kai Shed. That's our exhibition space. I hope you are amazed and impressed by the way this architecture works for a museum. And we have a lot of exhibits that you can have, have hands-on, have direct contact, can smell, can see, can hear about exhibits that tells a story how a port works. And we have all different aspects of professions that are needed to run the port. Next slide, please. And this is a perspective on the outdoor area. You can see 4 cranes, and another unique selling point for this museum is that we are trying to keep these cranes in shape. Even though they are rusty and look used, we try to keep them in function so that you don't just have exhibits to watch at, but you can also see and hear them working. And all these main technical exhibits are run by volunteers. Of course, we have a small team of professionals in our museum, but most of the work is done by volunteers. Next slide, please. And here is a view of 2 of the floating exhibits, a floating crane in the Port Museum of Hamburg. And I think we have the opportunity to really get in discussion with people. So you have the one-to-one measured exhibits. You see the large exhibits, the large technical tools you need to have to run a port, and to give you a perspective how a port can handle this large amount of goods that is transported globally. Next slide, please. And right now, since the 7th of September, we have a new exhibit in the Port Museum of Hamburg, and it's some sort of Mona Lisa for our museum, really a highlight object. And we are glad that, the restoration of this sailing ship was successful. The Peking is a flying pea liner, a 4-masted bark, and she used to sail to Chile for saltpeter and nitrate to get the material for fertilizer and also for military purposes. And this sailing ship is really something very emotional. It's very attractive, and not even Hamburg people, but also tourists and large groups of visitors, different target groups, are enlightened to see this ship. And it puts the Port Museum of Hamburg, of course, to a new level. And why did we get this sailing ship? It was built in 1911 on a dockyard in Hamburg by Blom and Voss for a Hamburg company, Lühs Reederei. And there are very, very attractive and a lot of stories that can be told of and from this ship. And we've got this ship due to a decision that was made 5 years ago by the national government. Next slide, please. We have the really great opportunity to develop the Port Museum of Hamburg to a national port museum, to a German port museum. And therefore we've got a lot of money, 185 million euros to build up a new museum in Hamburg, a national port museum. And it's not a maritime museum, it's not a museum that concentrates on the history of shipbuilding. The main aspect or the main topic of this museum will be to discuss about our globalized economy and all the impacts a globalized world has on a city, on a region, on a nation, and how goods are transferred, why they are transferred, who wins, who loses out of this trade, but also what implications are on our cultural and knowledge exchange through a port. So I think that's a very modern aspect, modern topic to discuss in this future museum. And the Port Museum of Hamburg will be part of this National Port Museum. Next slide, please. So what is its unique and innovative value proposition concerning the Port Museum of Hamburg? I hope you can imagine now that this museum is situated in an authentic working space. Therefore, we have a space within an industrial area with its own implications. It's an authentic working space. And we have presented our exhibits in an open depot and with a lot of hands-on access to these exhibits. And we have working devices in operation. As I told you, the cranes and all the heavy loads, the technical exhibits are still run by volunteers. And this large engagement of volunteers, right now we have around 150 volunteers working in the Port Museum of Hamburg, gives us the possibility to run this museum, to have the knowledge for the special techniques that are connected with the port, but also work as a marketing tool, of course, because they spread the news. They spread the news of this port museum and allow us to reach new target groups, allow us to reach out to new visitors to come to this museum. Next slide, please. And the Port Museum, of course, needs access to the water. It is linked to the River Elbe. And we have a lot to talk about. Why is this port situated at a river, not at the sea? The Port of Hamburg is 100 kilometers far away from the Northern Sea. So what made this port so successful? What made this river port so successful? And we have a lot of partners around the river in the industrial area, but also in the city, where a lot of institutions are situated that deal with the maritime history of Hamburg and of the port. And one of the main qualities, I think, also of the main questions to deal with, is that this museum is located off the main touristic stretch. So we are within the port, we are not in a touristic area, we are quite far away from the new concert hall, the Elbphilharmonie, where everyone wants to get when he comes to Hamburg, of course. We are still somehow a lost place, an insider's tip, but that's a quality some tourists are seeking for. They are trying to search for spaces off the road and off the main tracks of tourism. But we have to deal with a lot of difficulties, of course, within an industrial area. The main problem, the main task we have to deal with is that we are not reached so easily. We don't have a connection. There's a public transport possibility on the river, via the so-called Haddock ferry, and there's no station for the Haddock ferry at the Port Museum so far. We hope that we can improve on that when we build up the National Port Museum, because we expect a lot of interest to this new museum, and of course a lot more visitors to come to this place. So I hope this will give us the power to build up a station for this public transport by ferry. And also we need to improve on the public transport on land. Of course, there are also not so many buses and trains that reach our museum. But we can give the city, of course, the potential to bring people away from crowded areas and get to areas in Hamburg that are not so overcrowded. An aspect, maybe some of you already have heard of Venice, of course, but also of Barcelona, that the inhabitants of the city get angry about the massive attack of tourists coming to the city, coming to certain areas of the city. And this is something Hamburg is really keen on, to unclog crowded areas, and the Port Museum can help the city with that. And of course, we have this great opportunity to build up a national port museum, a German port museum, and to build up a museum of the 21st century with a spectacular architecture. I do hope so, at least. And that's, of course, great potential for this area. Next slide, please. Yeah, and what is the innovative access to this space? I think we can compare the Port Museum of Hamburg to two other museum spaces, former working spaces. You may know the Zeche Zollverein in Essen and the Völklinger Hütte in Saarland. They are really large spaces, industrial areas that are transformed to cultural spaces. And people like to go to these spaces, like to feel the atmosphere, but also get a different perspective on the area. Artists working there, I think they have really large opportunities to engage people, to be an attractive space. And of course, what is innovative for us, but also for the National Port Museum that we are going to build up, is a large engagement of volunteers. We want to be part of the city society. We want to be part of school education programs. We want to be part of research studies from universities and maritime institutions in Hamburg. We want to get involved, be a meeting space for a lot of people of the city. And we want to contribute to the preservation of traditional crafts. We want to educate young people, everyone who is interested in traditional crafts within the museum. And we want to offer a direct contact to our exhibits. Due to COVID-19, a lot of museums choose to develop their digital strategy, to develop their digital means to give access to the museum when they were closed. But I think the museum has always to concentrate on the real stuff and on the real experience within the museum. And we're trying to do so with the Port Museum of Hamburg. And the difficulty we have to deal with is right now that the Port Museum Hamburg has a relatively low budget. So we are concentrating on working on partnerships, on working together with our neighborhood and working with volunteers, as I told you, to spread the news of the Port Museum of Hamburg. Of course, this will change when we will become a national port museum. We will get a lot of money. We will have the opportunity to run a marketing team that is working for our museum. But right now, I think we also have the opportunity to reach a lot of persons, to tell our story, even though we have a relatively low budget. Next slide, please. And the special event that takes place every 2 years is the so-called Elbe Festival. It's something very special, and it's quite, I think, a good addition to the Hamburg Port anniversary, you may know. It's a festival that takes is a platform for 12 maritime institutions of Hamburg, and around 35 traditional ships there share these festivals at 3 locations. The last time there were 50,000 visitors visiting this festivals that takes place on 2 days every September every 2 years. And it's a special story, a unique selling point from this festival is that we want to establish a platform for all the voluntary work that is happening around the maritime area in Hamburg and the northern part of Germany. So we don't want to book musicians or artists that present their show, but we want to offer a platform for all our volunteers to show their ships, to show their work, their skills to the public. And I think this is a platform that works really well and is something that is supported by the city of Hamburg and by the Tourism Board of Hamburg too. Next slide, please. And to give you a short outline of the future development of the Port Museum of Hamburg, we will develop 2 locations for the National Port Museum. The Port Museum of Hamburg will be one space for the National Port Museum, and there will be new architecture not so far away. It's about a 10-minute boat ride from the Port Museum of Hamburg, and we have the opportunity to be visible to the northern part of the city and build up a new museum. And it's of course a task to connect to the other maritime institutions that are still existing in Hamburg, and of course we want to connect to the World Heritage sites of Speicherstadt and Kontorhausviertel. Because of course they are built due to the Port of Hamburg. And the new museum will deal with topics surrounding globalization and give access to hopefully a lot of different target groups from stakeholders of the maritime industry, of the port industry, up to schools, up to different organizations and visitors, tourists from all over the world. Next slide, please. To give you visible impression of the future museum, there's a short film I can show you. Because we don't have any visualization, visible architecture yet, we choose to give it an abstract view. We are still ahead of an architectural competition to develop the new Port Museum. And there you can see the 2 spots we are going to build up this museum. And we want to show the large technical means you need to run a port. And the content will be, the main topic will be to think about the present and the historical globalization, to show the interaction between the different industries from the land side and from the sea side. And to fulfill, of course, a task to think about how we want to live together, work together in future times. And the museum will be a museum of the 21st century. will be open every year around and 24/7. We want to have spaces, places where you can go to at 2 o'clock in the nighttime to have a meeting with friends and to have a look at the city or the port, to build up a space with high quality and different aspects of access and use. Yeah, so hopefully we'll do so, and the opening of the new museum is scheduled for 2030, so it's a long time to go. We have 10 years from now on, and of course we want to develop the Port Museum of Hamburg. We want to combine it with a newly constructed building, and hopefully this will be one point of interest for all of you, and hopefully we will sometime will be able again to travel, and would be glad to see you all around in Hamburg at the Port Museum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ursel, for this interesting presentation. We have some questions, I think. Wilte was asking, are you open for artists and other stakeholders in the Port Museum, in the Hamburg Port Museum?
In the Hamburg Port Museum, we are open for artists and different people, of course. We have a lot of space. That's something we can count on, and we want to give different perspectives on questions surrounding the port. And of course, artists ask questions, ask interesting questions, and we want to discuss these questions with the public. So the Port Museum of Hamburg is a space where we can situate and point out these questions.
And Camille was asking, who are the volunteers and how do you involve them? How do you motivate them and keep them engaged in the long term?
Well, that's one of our main work to do. The people are from 25 years old up to 85 years old, and most of them are, of course, 60 years and older, but we find them through our connections to the port industry, because we are getting in contact with men and women who are going to retire, and we show them around in the Port Museum and asking them, because they have the expertise of port work, if they want to engage with our museum. In addition, we're trying to find volunteers through digital means, but also through our partnerships and networks that are existing around the Port Museum. And we really get 1 to 2 appliances per week from volunteers who are trying to engage with us. And we're keeping them motivated because we have a platform where they can propose things for the museum to improve the museum, and Carsten Jordan, the head of the Port Museum of Hamburg, and myself, we often meet with the volunteers so they can engage with us. They get to know about our ideas for the museum, but they can bring in their ideas for the museum. So I think the main motivation for the volunteers is that they really feel as part of the family of the museum, that they are not just bringing their time and bringing their efforts, but they can engage really directly with the museum.
Okay, thank you. And then there was Wilte from Kaunas. She had another question. Wilte, maybe you want to pose it yourself, because I didn't really understand the second part. Can Wilte speak? Are you there? No, Wilte. Well, she was asking, do you have to keep 2 museums in the future? Do you have a plan for external support? And then She had another question: eco versus globalization. Will you
Sorry,
discuss it?
Tanya, yes, I'm here. Sorry, I have some technical issues here.
Okay.
Thank you very much for a very inspiring presentation. I'm looking forward to come to Hamburg and visit your museum. But still, I have a question because you mentioned the globalization topic, or modernization, which you really want to show in the content of your museum. And what about the eco or sustainability? Or so I was wondering, maybe you could explain a little bit more about these two, how you're gonna discuss it, or not, maybe.
Yes, we will discuss it and we will show it. Of course, climate change and eco questions are surrounded to the topic of globalization, and we will have a large outdoor area for around the new building of the National Port Museum 2. And there we will build up a garden, somehow showing what the port is also standing for, that plants and animals are coming to the city, to a port town with the ships, and that are coming to an area where they are not used to be, and what this do with this ecosystem in the port. But also to think about what pollution comes from these ships traveling, from this globalization, what happens in African countries where sustainability and ecosystems are destroyed for building up, for producing mobile phones or something like that. That's the main topic for the National Port Museum, of course, because ecosystems are, need to be supported. And of course, we want to discuss this with our visitors, but we also want to show it in an outdoor space and also in the museum. Yeah. And sustainability, of course, is a topic right now when we develop our architectural competition. We will, of course, need to think about sustainability of the building that we are going to raise up.